All right, welcome everyone. Today's Tuesday, November 4th, 2 p.m., regularly scheduled meeting of the Fort Myers Beach Charter Review Commission. Call the meeting to order. So all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's go through the roll call, starting down on the end. Michelle?
Michelle Cherney. Michelle Cherney.
Thanks, Susan. Jim Dunlap?
Beverly Milligan.
Ryan Thomas.
Anita Saracita.
And Ed Schoonover, he is coming in via Zoom. Ed, you're there, sir?
Yes, sir, can you hear me?
Okay, good. So I'd like a motion to accept a remote participation for Ed from someone, please.
So moved.
Support on that?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right. I will open the public comment session of our meeting. Seeing none, I'll close that just as quickly. I've got under this, well, first of all, I'll get the minutes out of the way. So you all received the minutes from our first organizational meeting, which we'll finish on some of that today. Can I get a motion to read that into the record, please?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thank you, Hank. Support for that?
Second.
Second by Brian. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Okay, let me do a few updates if I can. First of all, on the agenda itself, I passed around the meeting schedule, which you've all seen before. It has not changed, but it does have the articles that we're going to be covering in each one of the meetings further clarified. The agenda may have looked a little bit confusing to you that were looking at it for the first time, or maybe the public. We've got the old business, the three we're going to talk about today, and the new business, the two we're going to talk about next month. So I just want to clear that up for us and the public. We'll be doing Articles 1, 2, and 3 today, and then moving Articles 4 and 5 for our meeting on December the 2nd. So that's a change I want to make. If I can just get support for a final agenda then with those changes, please.
So moved.
Okay?
Second.
And second from Hank?
Yeah.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries unanimously. All right, now let me go through the next document, if I can, that I handed out to you. I titled it Charter Review Committee Article Discussion Protocol. I put this together to get a reaction, obviously, to provide some leadership on a potential process to go through this. And my methodology around this is to get full participation, to get the group think, to get some public feedback while we're in the moment, and then to call the formal ayes and ayes on the changes we promote or represent to make. So let me run through this quickly. Literally starting today, I will read for the record each paragraph of the articles that we're covering, and obviously continue with paragraphs where it makes sense to continue doing that. I will then call on each committee member, including the alternates, by the way, for full participation in the conversation. Everyone will have a reaction or none, or recommendations to that as we go through that. We'll keep track of those until everyone is finished. I will do the wrap-up on that, and then I will open it for general discussion on the items that we've all brought up so we can get some feedback on that. So then after we all have a chance to have those conversations, I'm going to ask for public feedback of the people that are in attendance, close that, and then we'll call for a formal vote on any recommendations or changes from the voting members, which would not include the alternates as long as we have a three-person quorum, but they will have the benefit of that full conversation embedded into our thinking. So I'm putting that out to get some reaction to that, any changes to that. It's what I want to follow to go through the whole process from now to April, if it meets your approval, or if there's something you want me to think about or adjust. It's just to put a straw man out there and get something formalized.
I think it's great, and thank you for including including us in the backup, for the backup.
Okay? Anybody else?
I wonder if we need to have individual member comments or could just open it up for discussion.
Take either one you want.
Because
To combine those two, you're thinking?
I think so.
Okay.
That's my thought, is that.
If you want to talk,
it
then
will-
talk.
It will move along quicker if they
Okay.
could do that, Jim, it seems to me.
Anybody have any concerns about that change? Ed, how do you feel?
I just add one thing. If the members could please not only turn their microphone on, but get nice and close to them. I'm having a hard time hearing some of the members over online, and I'm sure the YouTube broadcast the audio would be the same.
All right, so the recommendation was combine the group discussion, individual conversation, just open it up as we read the paragraphs, get everybody's input, then public comment, and then formal votes on the recommended changes. Yep.
I think that's a great procedure. Thank you.
Okay? Thank you, appreciate that, that'll work well. All right, so let me then give you a couple updates before we get into Article 1. First, Florida Gulf Coast University, I had Amy send out a deck today. We couldn't, because of sunshine restrictions, prearrange these conversations about the deck ahead of time, but I did meet with Will and Tracy on the conversation we had about getting some involvement from the university. To their credit, they had watched the last charter review committee and had already made contact to the university about setting up a meeting, which they had already. They came in contact with this gentleman, Dr. Robert, what was his last name?
Lee.
Lee, yes, Robert Lee, that's right. Former city manager of Naples, so he's got a big background in the city government, municipality, how this works. Done many, many charter review sessions and looked at charter recommendations for folks, and has offered his advice, counsel, and recommendations to us when and if we need them. We spent an hour with him at 1 o'clock today by video. I sent you the deck he covered. It does a very nice job of looking at the iterations of structures of municipal government. Scott was in the meeting too, so he'll have his own color commentary. But I thought I would spend just a moment and give you some findings that he had from that, the color commentary, if you will, just to kind of guide our conversation, which is why I still feel we're in the early organizational days of making sure we flow well. We're only going to cover those first couple today. First three today, rather than going any further. He was complimentary of the charter, well thought out. Those of you that had a hand in that from before thought it was straightforward. It did most of what it should be doing. He said that you don't have to make changes where changes aren't necessary or needed, so don't feel compelled as a commission to do that. He's seen all kinds of iterations of meeting several times a week and doing it in 6 weeks, or meeting as we are, which he thinks is a more methodical and appropriate way where you were going to get feedback organically as well as some of the more formal stuff we'll do. Thought our schedule was great. It had a deadline. The process that we just agreed to, he said most folks don't go into with a process. They just have general conversations, and you know how those go. So he was very complimentary of that. He talked a little bit about the history of these local governments in Florida, and there was some formality put around what local governments could do in 1968, as you saw in his document, codified in the early 70s, that basically said if it's not restricted by state or federal, the local governments can do that. And that was the genesis of local rule and all these things Anita and Hank and others would know very, very well. And he said that was the beginning of things taking their own local flavor and having their own local priorities and local involvement. But he said over time, as we all know, there have been more and more, as he put them, unfunded state mandates coming down from Florida that basically has collapsed home rule down to these are the things you will do, and by the way, do them, to you have less of that inventory than you had back in the 70s. So that's a reality of what we're working with. And so he encouraged us to make sure that we didn't self-restrict any further our council and the ability for them to flow with the moment. So the more general we can be with getting our point across, and the more open-ended we can be about the discretion that our governing body should be able to use, we don't want to become another guardrail around them when there's already so much of that coming down. And I thought that was really well done. In fact, he said since the early 70s, there are 1,050 unfunded state mandates that have come to local governments, just to put that in perspective. And there are 412 cities and municipalities in Florida. So just think of that burden that came down from on high about what we have to operate. So I thought that was really good guidance. The other thing he said, and this aligned very nicely with what Nancy said to us last time, is he would suggest that we keep two lists, purposely have two lists. The ones that we want in the charter and we believe strongly ought to be embedded in the charter, unlike things that he reflected on that are now in our state constitution, gambling and marijuana and all that stuff that doesn't belong in the Constitution, but people had their reasons and emotion around referendums to get that done at the time. The things that we feel ought to be in the charter itself, our recommendations ought to be clear to our council on that. And then he said that all the other things we have concerns about, we have on a separate list. We may be equally as passionate, but council ought to have, and they will anyway, just from us, discretion to put that in the categories that you may recall Nancy talked about, policies, resolutions, or ordinances that they get to do. And he said if you keep it clean that way, it's a lot more clear on our intent. And certainly, council has a choice to do either way, but it just kind of frees up the debate on what we believe ought to be the people and what we believe the people's representatives ought to be dealing with. I thought that was good advice, too. He went through the four forms of government. I won't go back through that. You know, we operate with a council manager. We have a CEO, Will, and reports to all of the councilors equally. And that's a professional manager. We chose to do that. Very consistent, appropriate for communities of our size, and where you need the professional leadership without the intricacies that come with having a strong mayor, strong personality, or individual representation in that regard. The thing I thought that I found really interesting is he said you ought to, and you may have seen it in the write-up, make sure you have the form of government that deals best with the times when you're under highest controversy. So those would be obviously disasters, and maybe today's political environment too. Will is not impeded by those conversations in doing his professional job and carrying out his responsibilities. Strong mayor and council, the other type of government, as well the other two hybrids in there, get very caught up in and very seduced in, if you will, to participating in some of the crossfire. And he would suggest that unless it's not working and we don't feel it's being productive, keeping your form of government out of that tit for tat is a very important part of the process. So I thought that was good advice too, and it made me feel good that we're weathering some of those we've gone through in our last 5 years pretty well, and it certainly seems to have served us well. We talked a little bit, because I'm getting some feedback, some of you may be too, about districts versus at large. He was very clear about when you have a small community, 6 Mile Island, it's really hard to divide it up in any sort of proportionality that doesn't inflict some sort of local consequence to it. But he went on to say that if you ended up doing something like that with the 5 councilors, should be 1, if not 2 for sure, that are elected at large to offset and mitigate that. And then the last thing I asked him about was majority vote. As you've all been through the charter several times now, as I have, you'll see in there that a majority vote of council can control most things, including hiring, firing, and of that. I asked him what he sees, because there could be agendas with candidates running that want to get that type of a vote. And then there could be the other way around where you want to make a change and you can't because you need 4 votes. He didn't really come down strongly on one side or another, other than to represent that it does cause a great deal of, delay is the wrong word, I don't want to put it in there, but if you've got a non-performing individual and you can't get the 4th vote, removing people's hard. And if you have a political situation, getting the 4th vote stops some of that too. I just put it out for the will of the conversation, so we think through those lenses when we start to go through the actual document. So we can have him back. He's going to be at our beck and call. Let me pause there for a second. Scott, ask you, is there anything I missed in the recap to the group that you want to highlight since you were sitting in the live meeting?
No, I think you covered everything. Well done.
We can have him here. I'll prearrange that when it's appropriate for y'all. We may have some things we need advice and counsel on and want to talk about. We also brokered the idea I chatted with you all about last month, and he is in charge of the professional internship program for them, the master classes of people that would be available and have hearts and heads and minds and legs for us to do things, particularly around research. He's going to send me some more information on that. That may invite him back to talk to you all about an assignment, should we choose to do that. It would be a direct reporting relationship to someone here at Town Hall. So this is serious responsibility, 300 hours of committed work, paid program. But Will and Tracy have many other things actually they want to have him help us with on the behalf of the town. So more to come on that. And if you have any feelings on that, fire them off to Amy and she'll get them to the right people on any reaction to that. But that is an offer that's out there now, and he's going to send us the documentation to do that if we choose to. And then we have full access to that individual to do many things for us, including research and recommendations and all the things that would happen with that. So that's a quick update. Any questions for me on that preliminary meeting with Florida Gulf Coast? Sound okay?
Good job.
Thank you for doing it.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. We talked about the professional survey. That is in Will's hands right now to give us a recommendation on both, if he thinks that would be helpful, and give us that formally, and also any budget around that. Most of these charter review commissions, as I've looked at several of them, do have some allocated budget for research and other things that go through it. So we'll handle that at the next meeting. But I have gone that far with it to get Will involved so he can do it above board and do it the bidding process and do all the stuff you need to do and then bring it back to us for a reaction recommendation. All right. One other thing that we didn't cover at the first organizational meeting has to do with absences. So I have made a recommendation to our town attorney that as we do with our other commissioned responsibilities on the island, that we have a fairly short time here together, and we have a lot to get done, and we're going to develop cohesive personality, so being here is important, even remotely. So I recommended to her that we would suggest that if you miss 2 meetings, unexcused absences, that you'll be removed from the Charter Review Commission. The alternates would then slide into a permanent role. So is there anybody that has any sort of heartache around that approach from a fairness and workability?
Could you restate that?
Yes. If you would miss 2 unexcused Charter Commission meetings where we don't have advance notice or there's no opportunity to do remote, and we weren't aware of that, we obviously could possibly lose a vote of the whole, if you will. So you'd be excused from the commission, and one of the alternates would step in to fill that full-time role. Brian?
If I can just add that, and that could be the recommendation to the town council, because it's the town council that appoints, so it would be the town council that would remove. However, I'm certain that they would take your recommendation to heart.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, Chairman, just as a matter of housekeeping, these meetings are all scheduled at 2 PM.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Anybody have a reaction to giving that to Counselor Safford and having him bring it to the committee of the whole and put that in writing for us so we've got enforceability around that and the ability to promote a alternate should if need be necessary?
Jim, I'm assuming that this applies only to the voting members.
Correct.
Okay.
No heartburn around it? Nancy, any additional information you need?
No, I think Scott will probably talk about the resolution that they just
Right.
approved, and what we would do is probably take that resolution back and add that additional request.
I think that would be, excuse me, I think that would be the cleanest way to do it. And we took your recommendations from last meeting and worked out the alternate situation, so everyone was on board with it. With regards to the survey, we want some more information, cost, what we're gonna get out of it. There could be some money in the budget to cover it, not specifically for the Charter Review Committee, but we may be able to draw some funds
Great.
if it's beneficial to the town and to the entire process.
I was able to clarify with the town manager that we do have access to include in that process only those registered voters that have the ultimate say in the workings of our town. So we can restrict that down to its mailings and its accountability around that when we get our results. Just something I had open last time for you guys to follow up on.
May I
Yeah,
ask
great,
a
sure.
que-
You sure me?
Does the absence policy apply to other committees also? That too? Is that right, Amy? Yeah.
It does. It applies to council, LPA, a lot of the advisory committees.
Okay, I don't remember that, but thank you for the reminder.
The key there is unexcused,
That's right, right.
so.
Okay,
Doesn't show up, we weren't aware, couldn't make other arrangements, that type of thing.
yeah, right,
Risk of a quorum.
thank you.
And you can always reach out to me if you need an excuse.
Sure.
Excused, I'll bring it before your committee for you.
All right, those were the miscellaneous items I had. Does anybody else have, before we get into the review of the first three articles, anything for the good of the cause that you want to be included in the dialogue up front?
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that either you or Scott discuss the resolution that was passed by council at their last meeting at your request to highlight for the public, those that may not have been aware of it, what the role of the alternates are. And I think this is on page 9 of 16 of your packet.
Mr. Chair, if you could, my computer's over there.
Please.
No, please.
The role of the alternates is your
Yeah.
question?
Yes, just for.
Yes, sure. So for the record, we have taken the position that our alternates are vital and valuable to us in full participation in conversation on all the topics. They will be called on, their insights will be included, their recommendations will be taken seriously. The only restriction will be down to the actual voting and codification of the final recommendations, that they would not be included in unless or until they are called upon in absence of a quorum for the group, and then they would be full voting members. That way, we get the benefits of their experience, their insights and recommendations. That can only be helpful to us. In the end, the chartered 5 members have to make the call on the final decision, but their insights will be helpful to get to the right answer.
And that was passed unanimously by the council.
Great.
With the caveat, Mr. Chair, of, in the event that only one alternate has to come in on a voting situation, it's been chosen to be alphabetically.
I think that's wonderful, and I don't know if you rethought that out, because I didn't figure it out yet, but whatever that is, it is.
It is in the resolution.
No, it's in there. It's alphabetically
All right, great.
and
Yeah.
alternates.
Hadn't
They
thought about
shall
that.
alphabetically rotate in filling occasional absences of appointed members. Also, just a reminder that the alternates are still subject to the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Law throughout the duration of their appointment.
Excellent.
Okay.
Any questions from the alternates on that? All good? All right, so any other business we need to attend to before we get into the first section here? All right. So as for what we put here, I will read the paragraph, and then as our counsel was given to us here, we'll open it up for conversation. We'll then open it up for public comment, and then we will obviously take our vote on the recommended changes that we feel we need to incorporate in the next round of this. So, Article 1, corporate name, purpose of the charter. Section 101, Town of Fort Myers Beach, the municipality hereby established shall be known as the Town of Fort Myers Beach. Anybody want to delve into that at all? I think we're all good.
There has been a lot of historical conversation about the name.
Pretty happy where it sits right now?
I'm happy with it, yes.
Everybody else feel good? Great.
So the only deviations that I have seen is the fact that Fort is not spelled out.
Yeah,
The charter does say that it is spelled out. And the decision is really to call it, and Nita, you probably know more than I about it, to call it a town Because in the alternative, you could be a city, or you could be a village, or, you know, another thing. But they've been the town of Fort Myers Beach for
For
many
so
years,
long
and
that no one wants to change.
I love it.
exactly.
Stationary.
And also, I do want to point out that it is quite costly if
Yeah,
you were
yes, we
to
do.
do some kind of change like that.
Yes.
Not time, place, or necessary in my mind. I don't know if anybody else feels any differently. You all good on that?
That's
It's gonna be Fort Myers Beach then. All right, section 1.02, purpose of the charter. The charter is ordained and established by the people of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, to promote the general welfare and common good of the community by providing the framework for a municipal corporation to exercise municipal home rule powers under the Constitution and laws of the state of Florida. Open for comments.
I just would underline the home rule, because, as has been pointed out, we have a lot of unfunded mandates that seem to supersede home rule, and we have always struggled with that, and it is good advice for us not to give, as the professor has indicated, any leeway, and keep our powder dry, you know.
State unfunded mandates total 1,050 since 1978. So if you just want to make a note of that, that's good counsel and highly emphasized. Anybody else on section 1.02, please? All right. Article 2, territorial boundaries. Boundaries of the town of Fort Myers Beach. Oh, boy. Territorial boundaries of the town of Fort Myers Beach upon the date of incorporation shall include the following areas situated in the county of Lee, state of Florida. Corporate limit lying offshore from Estero Island, which line is described as follows. All of that part of it within 1,000 feet in the Gulf of Mexico, as it says here, and 1,000 feet in the inland bays, and parallel with the shoreline of said Estero Island, excluding all of San Carlos Island, Black Island, and structures exclusively attached thereto. Open floor.
I would add one, Mr. Chair. There was a question brought up recently, it was in the Anchorage Committee, and it had to do with the Estrelita, the south end of Fort Myers Beach. And if that 1,000 feet went into, I believe that'd be called San Carlos Pass
Yes.
or not, and it isn't exactly expressed in this language here. It says the inland bays, but the point that was being made is that the St. Carlos Pass isn't necessarily an inland bay. So that was a question that was brought up recently.
Any of our historians on this group have any context or perspective there?
38 years, and that's never come up. So I think that's, or however many years, that's very interesting, what the Anchorage Committee brought up. That's very interesting. I don't think it hurts to add it.
I wasn't aware of it either.
Yeah, me either. It's never come up before.
So,
Ed, did you have any
there you
recommendation
go.
about
Thank
that?
you. Exactly.
I'm sorry, Mr. Zuba, I have a hard time. Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't speak in. Did you have a recommendation about that, Ed, that you've heard, or wanted to?
Well, but think that, and I think from an enforcement procedure that we would want to include that 1,000 feet. That is Fort Myers Beach, and it goes into the Gulf of Mexico, as this statement, this document says, and into the bay. The only difference would be the land on San Carlos Island. Fort Myers Beach still has control over the waters to the land of San Carlos Island. And I think that we should probably legally be interested to see what Nancy says, have control of that water towards, it would be towards Lover's Key, I guess would best describe it.
It would be defined, Nancy, help us here. It would be defined as the shoreline from our island to the middle of the Back Bay then, or a middle of the channel, is that correct?
Yeah, the 1,000 feet, maybe we can use the 1,000 feet that would extend contiguously around the south end of the island up to and including the Gulf of Mexico. Then it catches that whole area under the Matanzas Bridge and all that, or, yeah. San Carlos Bridge.
Nancy, any advice?
So I would just ask, I think Dr. Lee advised that sometimes if it's not broke, maybe you don't have to fix it. I would challenge you to be able to identify the benefit to the town. What I have heard is that it provides additional enforcement opportunities. I would need to confer with Mr. Yazzo and see how much we actually do enforce that, or if that is under the jurisdiction of perhaps Lee County Sheriff, or if it is under FWC. Clearly, you can't tax that, so that's not going to really help you from a financial perspective. But I'm happy to look into it. But I think I would challenge the commission to think about the benefit of doing that.
I
I
agree
would just
with
add
you.
one other thing, other than enforcement, that it could possibly affect in the future, actually in the near future, would have to do with dredging.
Yes, right.
And who's responsible for the dredging? There is a channel in that exact area that has been a little controversial lately, that was planned to be dredged, and it was.
That's right.
Ian happened, and the dredging was put off, and now it's back to,
Yes, that's true.
should be dredged again.
Particularly the tidal changes are very strong there, yes.
And I would also say, Madam Attorney, that this will come to bear when two boats run into each other out there, and where the liability extends from our island, where everyone else around the island's 1,000 feet, and then all of a sudden that piece isn't. You can bet the fingers will be pointed back at the island to say, no, that was always meant to be contiguous. So we may as well deal with it and call it out and get a reaction. If someone else is willing to patrol it and dredge it and take the liability of it accordingly, which I don't think you have people stand up to do, but otherwise we may have it by default.
Well, that was going to be my next question, and I am happy to research it. It's who is currently claiming ownership of that? Maybe members of the Anchorage Committee, if you guys have looked into this a little bit.
I know that it was recommended for the harbor master to check into it, so I wouldn't be surprised if it comes across your desk sooner than you anyway, Madam Attorney, but I just know that that was a concern, and the way that I read this Article 2 is it doesn't necessarily define that area.
Okay, I appreciate the heads up, and I will definitely look into it and research it.
Good.
Sometimes we will get our answer by what other people think it is too. So as we start to see other municipalities and regulatory authorities, oh, no, that's the south end of your island, and it always has been. We may as well codify it based on Ed's recommendation to own it and to make sure we're properly covered, insured, and all the things we need to do to do what we do when we put our contracts together.
Being new to the committee, I'll be looking for a lot of history, but one of the questions that I was
Right up
approached
into the
on,
mic.
why is Lover's Key not part of us?
Oh, that's-
I was surprised that I learned that they are Fort Myers Beach. They just have a different 4-digit code on their zip code. And they come back over here, they're here all the time, and they really are by themselves over there.
They're part of Bonita Springs.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So
And Michelle, ultimately, those lines were drawn based on the Incorporation Committee's efforts when they were trying to incorporate the island of where they had the votes. Because the area that they canvassed was all the way up to Pine Ridge Road. And it turned out to be that it was just Estero Island, where they thought they could get the incorporation.
I only, with the new bridge, the waterway issue, they're really by themselves there, and they consider themselves Fort Myers Beach. They're just not technically there. I didn't know if this was,
I think Bonita Springs even had a water tower on that property for a long period of time they recently took down.
You're right, Jim.
So I'm sure we would have a robust conversation should we try to annex it or claim accordingly. But we love them, they're neighbors, and as we all behave,
And who gets the tax dollar?
well, there's the key right there. Thank you, Michelle. Any other comments on the corporate limit? This is going to be the fun of this.
Yes.
Section 2.02, extension of the corporate limits and annexation. The corporate limits of the town of Fort Myers Beach may be revised as provided by general law. I'm not sure what else to add by that, Madam Attorney, or if there's something you had in mind that we should be aware of before we pass on that one.
Okay, so it is a correct recitation of the existing law. Right out of the barn, here's an example of an area of law that all municipalities in the state have been preempted from the state of Florida. You do not have any home rule authority to change the process for annexation, which is bringing property in. There's also de-annexation, which is kicking people out. There are two types of annexation process, and I think I mentioned some of this at our last meeting, but it is dictated by Chapter 171. It must be strictly construed and followed specifically. There are voluntary annexations and there are involuntary annexations. So needless to say, an involuntary annexation is a little bit more challenging for a local government to achieve, simply because that adjacent property, and the statute does have some specifics as far as it must be, it must border the municipality, and it can't like create an enclave or something to that effect. However, voluntary annexations, and I'm sure Dr. Lee would agree, that those happen quite more, I shouldn't say quite often, but it is not atypical to see a request for a voluntary annexation, and that means that the property owners in the area adjacent to the municipality, they want to be part of that municipality, which would then also make them part of the taxing requirements of that municipality. And so you might scratch your head and say, well, why would I want to be taxed from an additional governmental entity? It depends on what the zoning regulations are. And in other jurisdictions, it is not uncommon for a project perhaps to be halfway into a city and halfway into the county, or be entirely into the county. And through the annexation process, there would be an ordinance, because it must be done by ordinance, to annex that property into the municipality. Well, then you've got to have a future land use designation for it.
Yes.
And then you got to zone it. So it is not uncommon to see those three actions traveling together as the need may occur. So, yeah, it's in your charter right now. It is basically a one sentence because of the preemption by 171.
Everybody feel okay with how it's represented here? Maximum flexibility and maximum accuracy, okay. Article 3, general powers of the municipality. The town of Fort Myers Beach shall have all governmental, corporate, and proprietary powers to enable it to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services, and may exercise any power for municipal purposes except as otherwise provided by law. The powers of the town of Fort Myers Beach shall be construed liberally in favor of the municipality, limited only by the Constitution, general law, and specific limitations contained herein. That is an example of one of those things Dr. Lee was talking about, is don't get these things too tight they're trying to manage within the guidelines, when maximum flexibility they wouldn't have had to deal with had we not put those restrictions on, they're allowed to do by other means. So that's just one that came to mind that I read that he was talking about when we were talking to him a little bit earlier today. But let me open up for the good discussion.
I think that's well said, that construed liberally is the key phrase in my view, and that keeps us on it
So I don't want to take up a lot of time at the commission's meeting. However, I do want to point out that those of you that read our ordinances very, very closely, you will find that in the whereas clauses, this is pretty much a statement that is made there. And the reason for that is because it basically, in that ordinance, as a town, we are saying we are authorized to do this. And we do it basically because of our home rule powers. So you'll see some language that is very, very similar to that.
Excellent. Any other comments on Article 3, Paragraph 1? Nothing? Okay, Section 3.02, Joint Exercise of Powers. The town may exercise any of its powers or perform any of its functions and may participate in the financing thereof, jointly or in cooperation by contract or otherwise, with any one or more states, counties, municipalities, or any agencies thereof, or the United States, or any agency thereof. Basically allows us to go horizontally or vertically in any way we need to properly run ourselves, depend on, lean on, look for advice, and partner with any other legitimate organization that could advance the dialogue that we want to have, is the way I summarize that in my mind. Open conversation. No changes, no recommendations, no comments? Oh my, okay, good. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our required readings today. There's a couple things I'll point out, and then I want to go around and make sure, like we agreed at the last meeting, that if you would like anything included in the upcoming meeting as a matter of agenda items, that's the time to go through it. I'll call on each of you individually in that regard to make sure you get a chance to do that. As we look at the next couple three, and they're meaty as they will be, I draw your attention ahead of time on the council member elections and charter offices. Look through there, if you will, and see whether or not you can find any reference to the staggered terms, because I think that's got some challenges to it if we don't codify it in there. I may have missed it, but I just want you to know that. And also the meetings, in the section, when you get to that later on, it says all meetings shall be public and scheduled between a certain time frame. I want you to think about the all meetings, because there's examples that our town councilor and others can bring up that will not be public meetings, that want to make sure we don't get a charter document in there that conflicts with practical behavior. So I bring those up just for your pre-reading. All right, with that being said, let's talk about the next meeting, which, let's clarify for everybody, is on December the 2nd, 2 o'clock. We'll be going through Articles 4 and 5. It should be a meeting conversation. Brian, do you have anything else that you want us to think about for the agenda between now and December 2nd to have included for a conversation?
None.
Okay, Bev?
Nope.
Jane?
Just as you read that Article 4, keep in mind that there has always been discussion about whether or not we should have an elected mayor as opposed to the simple-minded decisions of 5 people in the town.
And there's a quote we'll put down.
In some instances, fellow council members may not know each other and may not have a feeling of depth, whereas a town has a better sense when they are elected, in my view. So let's talk about that in my view.
Excellent.
Actually, I do have.
Sure, please, yeah. go
Sorry, I
ahead.
have a comment. So I just want to introduce a concept for people to think about as we,
Yeah.
yeah, as we begin discussing Section 4. We all understand home rule and registered voters and things like that, but the definition of community, in fact, is not just the voters. It's businesses, it's
Chamber.
homeowners, it's taxpayers, which go beyond the voting resident. And what I see in that section is no reference to at least some kind of formal recognition of that in the charter somewhere. I think that section is the place for it. I have ideas as to where in there, But I just want to introduce that concept because it's simply not there.
It's a great call, Bevan. I'm glad you let us think about it at a time. It goes to community culture in my mind,
Yes.
who we include, who we welcome, who we invite, who we depend on, who we learn from. And I hope that's a bigger audience versus a smaller one. So more of that to come. How about you, Hank?
No.
Nothing? Michelle, anything for the next meeting you want us to keep in mind?
Nothing at this time.
Okay? Looks like Nita not here at this point. Good. One other thing I want to mention is that Cape Coral is going through this process as we are right now. It was brought to my attention that there are some restrictions that they are dealing with around the number of amendments they can make to their charter during the charter review session. In fact, it is 4 during a general election and 5 during a midterm election that you're allowed to recommend for changes, formal charter changes. I can't find any verbiage in that deals with that in ours. I did ask Dr. Lee if he was aware of that. He was not aware of hearing that before, but he thought the Department of Elections may have a better insight on to whether or not there's any Florida statutes that restrict the amount of changes you're allowed to make at one time to a charter. So between now and the next meeting, we'll do some research on that so that we can guide you, so your robust conversations don't get larger than what we're allowed to end up doing in the end, and therefore we'll deal with the matters that are most urgent and important and necessary for us. All right. Anything for the good of the cause that I didn't raise? So, Madam Clerk, anything on your end?
No, sir.
Counselor?
So I'm sorry, I always have 2 cents to add.
I'm always going to call on you for that reason.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. Some people don't, but.
I saw that
anyway,
at council
appreciate
many times, yes.
So what I was going to say, however, is that there is a section in the statute, and I will do some research on it, that does provide for like Scrivener-type errors and changes to be made to a charter short of an actual referendum. And if you look at a copy of the charter that is available to you on from Municode, which is the Municipal Code Corporation's website, throughout that charter, you're going to see a couple places where it says, we passed an ordinance that clarified the language in the section, but it was not sent to a referendum. In fact, I think, Amy, we did that with the changing of the date of the election from March to November. So there is some statutory, again, remember, this is kind of preempted, right? That will guide you on some changes that are not fundamental to the charter.
Thank you for that. That did come up with Dr. Lee also. We had a conversation. Amy reminded us that move was the elections board that made that move for us. We didn't do that as a matter of charter amendment, but extending the terms of our counselors from 3 to 4 years, we did. So it's that kind of discernment that I think you're talking about that we keep in mind.
Yes.
And Counselor Liaison, anything from you, Mr. Safford?
Not from me, but is there anything other than the amending the two-strike thing that I need to bring to council our next meeting?
Well, I think that's the only homework you have left.
Okay, well, good. I like short homework. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, thank you. Next meeting is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2 PM. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you for